I never used to believe in the slow fading of love. The kind that doesn't crash down with screams and broken dishes, but tiptoes out quietly, leaving behind carefully folded towels, mutual respect, and a king-sized bed that somehow feels too large. That's what had happened with Tom and me. We were married for 28 years.
Good years, mostly.
Solid, dependable, filled with little traditions and the kind of quiet companionship people envy in passing but don't understand from the inside. He still kissed me on the forehead every morning before leaving for work. I still brewed his coffee the way he liked it, black, 2 sugars, a pinch of cinnamon. We had our rhythm. But it had been years since he'd looked at me like a woman. Years since I'd felt that thrum of anticipation in my belly, or the thrill of a glance held just a second too long. I used to blame menopause. Then I blamed the routine. Eventually, I stopped blaming anything at all. I just got used to being invisible. That changed one rainy Thursday. I remember the weather because it made the whole house smell like wet grass and asphalt. I just returned from a yoga class, drenched to the knees, annoyed at myself for not checking the forecast. When I opened the door, there was someone standing in the hallway, talking to Tom. He was leaning against the banister, his jeans wet around the hem, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. His dark hair was tousled, clinging to his forehead, and when he turned toward me, I caught my breath. There was something about him that stopped me cold, not just that he was undeniably handsome, but that he looked familiar. Tom brightened.
Oh,
Honey, this is Matt. You remember my mom's son from her second marriage? He was a teenager when we got married. You met him once at the wedding, I think. My stepbrother. Sort of. I remembered now, vaguely. A lanky kid in a too-big blazer, standing in the corner of the reception hall, sipping ginger ale like it was whiskey. We hadn't spoken more than a hello. Back then, he was just a detail in Tom's past. Now, he was standing in my foyer, a full-grown man with stubble and striking gray eyes, the kind that seemed to see more than they should. He smiled at me. Long time, huh? His voice was low, smooth, with a hint of something playful in it. I suppose it has been, I said, returning his smile. I tried to ignore the flicker in my chest. What brings you here? Passing through.
got some meetings in the city.
Tom said I could crash here for a few days. Tom, ever the generous host, clapped him on the back. Only if you agree to grill dinner tomorrow. Liz gets sick of my steaks.
And that was that.
Matt was staying in our guest room for the weekend. Harmless enough. But there was something about having him in the house that unsettled me in a way I hadn't expected. It started with little things. The way he moved around the kitchen shirtless the next morning, making coffee like he'd lived here for years. The way he'd lean in too close when asking about the remote. The smirk he gave me when I dropped a spoon and bent to pick it up. That evening, Tom had to stay late at the office. Quarterly reports, some deadline he couldn't avoid. Matt and I sat on the back porch sipping wine, watching the rain come down in a lazy, hypnotic drizzle. The air smelled like wet leaves and earth. Hard to believe you've lived here so long, he said, glancing around the backyard. You and Tom have a good thing. I sipped my wine.
We've built something.
A life. But are you happy? It was such a blunt question. So unfiltered. So unlike the polite small talk I was used to. I didn't answer right away. He looked at me, his eyes steady. I always thought you were too beautiful to settle for boring. That line should have made me laugh. It should have struck me as a line. But the way he said it, so quietly, so sincerely, it felt like the first real compliment I'd had in years. It landed somewhere deep inside me, somewhere tender and ignored. I'm not sure anyone has called me beautiful in a very long time, I admitted. Then people are blind. The pause that followed was heavy, not awkward, charged. I cleared my throat, feeling the wine buzz in my chest. I should go check the casserole. He stood stepping close. Too close. You really don't see it, do you? See what? That you're still magnetic as hell. He was right in front of me now. Inches. I could smell his cologne, woodsy, sharp, masculine. His gaze flicked to my lips, and for a moment, I swore he was going to kiss me. Instead, he just smiled. A slow, dangerous smile, and walked back into the house. That night, I lay awake in bed beside Tom, who was snoring softly, unaware of the storm inside me. What was happening to me? I felt like a schoolgirl again. My skin too tight, my breath catching for no reason. Every time I heard Matt's footsteps down the hall, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in over a decade. It wasn't just attraction. It was awakening. The next morning, I lingered in the kitchen after my shower, robe tied loosely. Matt came in, towel around his neck, chest bare, damp hair still dripping from his own shower. He looked at me. Really looked. I didn't look away. The days blurred after that. Little touches. Passing too close behind me in the hallway. Holding my gaze a second too long at dinner. Our fingers brushing on the couch. Every moment built a tension so electric it made my bones hum. And then, on the third night, it broke. Tom was out again. A client dinner. He texted to say he'd be home late. Matt and I were watching some movie, though I couldn't tell you which. I wasn't watching it. I was watching the way his thigh brushed mine when he shifted on the couch. I was aware of every inch of him, of myself, of the way my breath shortened every time he leaned in to speak. Halfway through the movie, he paused it.
Looked at me.
"Do you want this to happen?" he asked. I should have said no. I knew I should have said no. But I nodded. And then he kissed me. It was nothing like I'd remembered kissing. Not perfunctory, not routine. It was slow and consuming. His hands were in my hair, then on my back, then under the thin fabric of my robe. I gasped against his mouth, my body already responding before I could think. He lifted me into his lap as though I weighed nothing. Our mouths never broke contact. The thrill of it, the danger, the newness, the fact that this man was someone I barely knew and yet seemed to know me, made every nerve come alive. We didn't even make it to the bedroom. The couch. The floor. My back against the kitchen counter at one point. It wasn't just sex. It was release. The kind that makes you cry afterward, and you don't even know why. When it was over, we sat in silence. My robe was draped half off one shoulder. His fingers traced slow circles on my thigh. "We shouldn't have," I whispered. "No," he said, his voice low. "But I don't regret it." I didn't either. Not then. Not yet. That night, as I slipped back into bed beside Tom, I stared at the ceiling and felt something shift inside me. Not guilt. Not shame. Just awake. The next morning, everything should have felt different. And yet, on the surface, nothing had changed. I stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee like I did every morning. The same mugs. The same ceramic sugar bowl with the tiny chip on the rim. Tom was still in his bathrobe, scrolling through his phone, muttering about the traffic. Matt walked in barefoot, sleepy-eyed, scratching his chest. And just like that, the entire previous night collapsed into silence between us. But my body remembered. Every nerve, every muscle still humming with the echoes of what we'd done. I couldn't look at him without feeling the heat bloom across my cheeks, or without the traitorous curl of want in my belly. Matt didn't avoid me. He didn't flirt either. He was maddeningly calm, folding back into the role of charming houseguest as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't kissed every inch of my skin and made me cry out loud enough to pray the neighbors were asleep. Tom didn't notice a thing. Why would he? I was still making his coffee, still folding his shirts, still nodding along to his stories about quarterly returns and Jim from marketing who always parked too close to the curb. The guilt didn't come immediately. It seeped in slowly, like water under a door, unnoticed at first, until your socks are soaked. That night, Tom reached for me in bed. It was awkward, sudden, like he remembered it had been a while and figured it was time. He kissed me gently, his hand moving under the covers. And I let him. I closed my eyes and thought about Matt's hands instead. I hated myself for it, but it was the only way I could feel anything. Afterward, I cried in the bathroom. Not because I regretted what I'd done, but because I didn't regret it enough. Matt left the next morning. A handshake for Tom. A duffel bag over his shoulder. He didn't say much to me. Just a glance, a subtle smile, and something in his eyes that made my breath hitch. A week passed. Then, too, I went back to yoga. I made Tom's coffee. I folded towels and went to brunch with my girlfriends. I played the part, but nothing felt the same. And then a text. Matt, still thinking about you. I can't stop. I stared at my phone for a full minute. My heart pounded, hands trembling in the quiet kitchen. I should have deleted it, blocked the number. But instead, I typed back. Me. I thought I was the only one. That single exchange reopened everything. We didn't jump into another physical encounter. Not right away. It began with messages, short at first. Then longer. Then late-night phone calls, when Tom was asleep. We talked about everything, music, regrets, what we wanted that we didn't have the courage to say out loud. With Matt, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't just someone's wife. I was seen.
Desired. Alive.
I tried to convince myself it was just emotional. That once the rush wore off, we'd both let it go. But then Matt came back to town. He claimed it was for business. Maybe it was.
But he stayed at a hotel this time. Texted me the address.
Matt. Room 402. If you want to talk. I told myself I was just going to see him. That I needed to close the loop, get it out of my system. I spent an hour choosing what to wear anyway. I settled on a simple navy dress, not too tight, not too obvious, but when I checked the mirror, I added lipstick. Just in case. The hotel was downtown. Discreet. I knocked. He opened the door and said nothing. Just stepped aside and let me in. I walked past him, heart racing, my heels clicking softly on the carpet. The room was quiet, dimly lit. I turned to say something, some preamble, some apology. But he was already kissing me. It was rougher this time. Desperate. Our clothes came off in pieces, impatient hands, mouths everywhere. He lifted me onto the edge of the dresser, kissed down my throat, and made me forget where I was. Who I was. Afterward, we lay tangled in white sheets, our bodies still slick with sweat. He was silent, one arm under his head, staring at the ceiling. I traced the curve of his collarbone with my fingers.
I'm scared, he whispered.
Of what? Of how easy this feels.
He looked at me then.
It's not easy for me. And I believed him. God help me, I did. We saw each other again the next week. Then again. Sometimes it was just lunch. Sometimes we sat in his car near the park, talking for hours. Sometimes it was sex that left me shaking and confused and more alive than I'd felt in years. We didn't talk about the future. Not at first. It was as if saying anything too concrete would collapse the delicate thing we'd built. But cracks began to form. Tom started noticing. Not the affair. He'd never imagined that, but the distance. You've been somewhere else lately, he said one night over dinner. Are you okay? I smiled. Of course. I hated how easy the lie came. My body was with Tom. But my heart, my mind, Matt had invaded everything. I found his scent in the shower, his voice in music, his touch in my dreams. I couldn't even fold the laundry without remembering how he once pulled my underwear aside in the hotel room and murmured, "You drive me crazy, Liz." I started wondering how far it would go. Would this be a one-year thing? A fling I'd look back on when I was old, half ashamed, half nostalgic? Or would I blow up my entire life for him? The scariest part was realizing I didn't know what I wanted anymore. I loved Tom, or at least I loved what we'd built. But I no longer wanted just safe. I wanted fire. And Matt was fire. One night, after one of our stolen hours together, Matt sat on the bed, looking at me like he was about to break. "I'm tired of hiding," he said. My heart dropped. "Matt."
No.
"Just listen. I don't want to be your secret. I want more than hotel rooms and text messages." I stood at the window, arms crossed. "You knew what this was." "I thought I did. But then I fell in love with you." The words hit me like a wave. No one had said that to me in years. Tom said he loved me, sure, but it had become a ritual, like saying "bless you" after a sneeze. Matt's voice cracked when he said it. I turned to face him, my eyes stinging. "I don't know if I can leave my husband," I said. "Then don't. But don't pretend this is nothing." I didn't answer. I just crossed the room, took his face in my hands, and kissed him like I meant it. Because I did. Even if I didn't know what came next. It's strange, the things we tell ourselves in order to keep going. That we're still in control. That we can stop anytime. That we're not hurting anyone, at least not really. That love, in any form, is always a good thing. By the time fall rolled in, I had become a woman who lived two lives. In one, I was the wife of a well-respected regional manager, part-time volunteer at the local library, known for her blueberry scones and impeccable linen closet. In the other, I was someone's secret, someone's obsession, someone's reason for not sleeping at night. And the truth was I liked both lives. I liked them too much. Matt and I met once a week, sometimes twice. I told Tom I was doing yoga, book club, visiting my sister. I learned how to lie fluently, how to erase text messages, how to keep eye contact without flinching. It surprised me how easy deceit became when desire burned hot enough to melt guilt. Our meetings weren't just physical anymore. They were layered, slow conversations over wine, the kind where time folded in on itself. He told me things about his childhood I hadn't known. I told him stories about my college years, about my dreams before I became a wife and then a mother. I told him I used to want to write, that I once wanted to move to the coast, that I used to crave oceans and noise and uncertainty. Why didn't you? He asked.
I settled, I said.
He looked at me then with a softness that hurt. You don't have to keep settling. But what does that mean when you're 53? When you've built a house, a reputation, a network of mutual friendships, and joint bank accounts? It's not just about love anymore. It's about who'll feed the dog if things go wrong.
And yet,
every time Matt touched me, I lost my footing. Every time his mouth found the curve of my neck, I forgot everything that came before. It was a rainy Thursday when everything nearly unraveled. Tom and I were invited to a charity dinner downtown. One of those events where everyone dressed just a little too formally and the wine was just good enough to justify the drive. I wore a black dress I hadn't worn in years, low back, soft silk, the kind that made me feel a little dangerous. Tom complimented me on the way out the door, kissed my cheek like a brother might. I smiled, posed for a picture with him on the steps, posted it later with the caption, "Still my favorite date." The lie clung to me like perfume. Matt texted that night. Matt, I saw the photo. Me. I had to go. He asked weeks ago. Matt, you looked incredible, but it hurt. I stared at that message longer than I should have. Something about the simplicity of it hurt, made my chest tighten. Me. I know.
I'm sorry.
His reply came quickly. Matt, I want to wake up next to you, not just see you between lies. That night, I lay in bed beside Tom, listening to the sound of his breathing, even and untroubled. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run barefoot down the hallway and get into my car and drive to Matt's hotel, pound on the door, tell him yes, I'll leave it all. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at the ceiling until morning, my body hollow with wanting.
Days passed.
Then a week.
I didn't see Matt.
Didn't text him either. I thought the space would bring clarity. It didn't. It just made everything ache more. Then, out of nowhere, he showed up at the library where I volunteered on Thursdays. I was sorting returned books behind the desk when I saw him, standing by the large print fiction shelf, wearing that dark jacket I loved. He didn't approach me right away. Just watched me, waiting. My heart thudded so loudly, I thought surely someone could hear it. When I walked over to him, my hands trembled slightly. What are you doing here? I whispered. I needed to see you, he said. I miss you, Liz. Every damn day. I swallowed hard. This isn't the place. Then come with me. I can't just. Yes, you can. You always say you can't, but you could if you wanted to. I hated that he was right. I also hated that I wanted to go with him more than I'd wanted anything in years. We left. Drove in silence to his apartment, a small loft downtown. New place. He'd moved in last month, but hadn't told me. Too dangerous, he said. Too tempting. Inside, the windows were open, rain on the glass, everything smelling like wood and soap and warm skin. As soon as the door closed, he kissed me.
Hard.
No words. We didn't make it to the bed. The hallway was enough. My back against the wall, his hands lifting my dress, my breath caught somewhere between guilt and desperate relief. It wasn't just sex that time. It was something closer to grief. Like mourning the version of ourselves we couldn't have in daylight. Afterward, we lay on the floor, the wooden boards cool beneath us. He traced a line down my arm, slow and quiet. "I'm losing you," he said.
No, y whisperat.
"You're not." But I didn't sound convincing. Not even to myself. The next day, Tom asked if I wanted to go away for the weekend. Just the two of us. We haven't done that in a while. It was true. We hadn't. The suggestion caught me off guard. A part of me wondered if he knew. If some tiny instinct had sparked in his bones. But he smiled as he said it, calm and warm and totally unsuspecting. I said yes. We drove up to the lake house we hadn't visited in over a year. It was quiet, colder than usual. We played cards by the fireplace.
Cooked together.
Slept in the same bed without touching. On the second night, Tom stood out on the deck, staring at the trees. He said, "Are you unhappy?" The question knocked the breath out of me.
What?
Don't lie, Liz. I may not be romantic anymore or exciting, but I'm not stupid. I stared at him, at the slope of his shoulders, the slight bend in his back that had developed over the last few years. "I don't know," I said finally. He nodded, as if that confirmed something he'd already feared. "I want us to be okay," he said. "But if you've stopped wanting this life, I don't want to be a cage for you." And that was what nearly broke me. Tom didn't scream, didn't accuse. He gave me permission to go. And somehow, that made it worse. That night, I called Matt from the bathroom with shaking hands. "I think he knows," I whispered. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Silence. Then, softly, "I can't be in this limbo forever, Liz." I didn't sleep. Not really. And in the morning, the world felt different. I had stood at the edge of the cliff for so long, staring down, feeling the wind tug at my clothes, wanting to jump, terrified to fall. Now, I wasn't sure if I was about to leap or walk away entirely. The following week passed in a fog. Not a dramatic storm of emotion, not tears and slammed doors, but something subtler. A quiet numbness, the kind that settles into your chest when you've carried too much for too long. Every morning I woke beside Tom, and every morning I felt the weight of my double life pressing harder, demanding an answer.
I didn't see Matt.
Not because I didn't want to, but because I had to find out if I could live without him. I told myself I needed clarity.
Space.
But the truth was uglier. I was afraid. Afraid that if I saw him again, I'd say yes. To all of it.
To him.
One evening, I found myself in the walk-in closet just standing there. My side, blouses in a color palette that hadn't changed in years. His side, neatly folded sweaters. The tie rack he never used. In the corner was a shoebox I hadn't noticed in forever. I opened it. Inside were old photos.
Of us.
College days. Tom with longer hair. Me in that faded denim skirt I'd loved. I stared at a photo of us laughing on the beach, our skin younger, looser. We looked so alive. And yet, somehow, we'd sleepwalked into something that no longer looked like the people in those pictures. Still, Tom had been kind. Loyal. He had done nothing to deserve betrayal. I kept thinking, if he had cheated, if he had hit me, if he had grown cruel or distant or cold, it would be easier. But he hadn't. He had just stayed the same. And I had changed. Or maybe I had just remembered who I used to be. That Friday Matt called. "I'm leaving next week," he said. "Back to Denver. They offered me a position there, long-term." I didn't breathe. He continued. "I didn't say yes. Not yet." "What are you waiting for?" I asked, voice flat. "You." The silence between us was thick. Heavy. My heart beat against my ribs, like it was trying to escape. "Say something, Liz." "I don't know if I can do it," I said. "I'm not asking for a promise. I'm asking for the truth. Do you want a life with me? Or do you want to go back to pretending this never happened? My throat tightened. He waited. And when I didn't answer, he ended the call. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen. The house was quiet. Tom was watching some old documentary upstairs. I sat in the dark, staring at the closed front door. I imagined walking through it, leaving behind the plates, the couch, the Sunday routines. I tried to picture my life as Matt's partner. A new city, new people, mornings in his bed. Starting again, but older, softer, rawer. And I also imagined Tom waking up alone, finding my note, his quiet confusion, his disbelief, the pain I would leave behind like a scent in the rooms. The decision wasn't romantic. It wasn't even brave. It was excruciating. The next morning, I made 2 cups of coffee. I handed one to Tom. He looked up at me, surprised. "You're up early." I couldn't sleep. He nodded. Me either. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then I reached across the table and took his hand. "I need to tell you something," I said. He didn't flinch, just waited. And I told him. Not everything, but enough. Enough to make his jaw tighten. Enough to make his eyes fall to the floor. I told him there was someone. That it had started unexpectedly. That I never planned for it. And that I was sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I expected him to yell. He didn't. He stood, walked into the other room, closed the door. I didn't follow. He didn't speak to me the rest of the day. That night, he slept in the guest room. The silence in the house was no longer peaceful. It was radioactive. And still, I didn't run to Matt. Because I knew this part was mine to sit with. Mine to own. 3 days later, Tom and I sat across from each other in the kitchen again. "I'm not going to ask who it was," he said. "I don't want to know." I nodded. "But I need to know, are you done with it?" The answer rose in me like a tide. "No," I said softly. "I don't think I am." He closed his eyes. Just for a second. "I see." And that was when I realized love isn't always enough. Not the comfortable kind. Not even the faithful kind. Sometimes love can't compete with longing. Tom didn't ask me to leave. Not immediately. He said he needed time. We made arrangements, separate bedrooms, separate space. It was quiet, civil, brutal. I didn't call Matt right away. I wanted to be sure. But the emptiness was unbearable. The ache of not touching him, not hearing his voice, was too loud, too alive. So I called. He answered on the second ring. I told him, I said. He knows. There was a pause. "Are you all right?" "I don't know." "Are you coming to me?" I took a long breath. My heart was hammering again. "I want to try." And then, the first real silence I'd heard from him. The silence of relief. He didn't say, "I love you."
Not yet.
He just said, "I'm here. Whenever you're ready." 2 weeks later, I packed a suitcase. Not everything. Just what I needed to feel like a person. My laptop. A pair of flats. That navy dress. I didn't take the jewelry Tom gave me on our 20th anniversary. I left a note on the dresser. I didn't say goodbye. Just thank you, and I'm sorry, and I hope you find peace. Matt met me outside the airport. It was raining again, like the day we first kissed. He opened the car door, smiled at me like I was air he could finally breathe. We didn't speak on the drive. Just held hands over the center console. Mine trembling. His steady. At the apartment, he set down my bag and turned to me. "You sure?" he asked. "No," I said. "But I'm not running anymore." And then he kissed me. This time, slow. Tender. No hunger. Just recognition. That night, we made love as if we were starting something, not escaping something. His hands were careful. His mouth soft. We didn't rush. We didn't need to. I cried when I came. Not out of sadness. But because something in me had opened. Something I thought had died a long time ago. The road ahead wasn't clean. There were nights I missed the quiet weight of Tom beside me. There were mornings I doubted everything. But every time I saw Matt's face in sleep, Every time he reached for me in the dark without speaking, I knew I had chosen truth. Not safety, not ease, but truth. And in this second life, where the lines were no longer drawn by habit or expectation, I finally remembered what it felt like to want. Not just to be wanted, but to want unapologetically, to choose. And that made all the difference.